Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
It's time to stand up, speak out, get involved, and let's be intentional. Hello and welcome to Intentional. I am your host, Mick Meow. It's really good to be with you today. The show is going to be lit. You don't want to miss it. And one of the topics that we're going to be delving into with Dr. Mary Talley Bowden is doctors being targeted by medical boards and hospitals. Now, there is a very real dark agenda of censorship and retribution for anyone who doesn't fall in line and push the COVID hospital protocols or carry the COVID vaccine narrative safe and effective. Just push that forward. It's shameful and it's appalling. But be that as it may, I am really very grateful that you are with us today and that you tuned in and that you're part of the conversation. So if you're catching us live right now, go ahead, drop a comment in the chat or drop an emoji in there and let's go ahead and connect. If you can, hit the like button and, then just hang loose because it's really going to be a good show. But before we jump into today's show, ladies and gentlemen, we absolutely have a massive fentanyl crisis that is plaguing our nation. And one of the best things that we can do is just be prepared. Now, you and I have heard and we've seen the stories of these overdoses and deaths that have occurred from a very small amount of this notoriously dangerous and deadly drug. So at thefentanyltest.com, you can protect yourself and your loved ones by purchasing any of these fentanyl detection kits, which are very easy to use. You can use them at home. You can use them in the field. You can use them in the school system. If you just go to thefentanyltest.com and enter in promo code MEOW, you're going to get a 10% discount. Oh, and by the way, in about 6 to 9 months, they're going to be introducing the world's first fentanyl detecting glove. And you can order those right now. It's going to detect fentanyl down to 1 nanogram per milliliter, just like all the other fentanyl tests. So you just go ahead and order that today and protect those precious lives. Now, with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to get intentional. As I mentioned earlier, Dr. Mary Talley Bowden is with us today. She is a board-certified physician in both otolaryngology and sleep medicine. Dr. Bowden is one of the most censored physicians in America that I know of. Why? Because she did her research and she engaged in critical thinking. She provided advocacy and care to thousands using medications like ivermectin through the early years of COVID. She refused to become an incentivized shot pusher, and instead she began sending out the clarion calls of the vaccine injuries that she was witnessing. And without fear, she pressed forward, being a voice for patient and physician autonomy, and transparency in healthcare. Now, Dr. Bowden is a friend here to us at Intentional and in Oklahoma. She flew out on her own dime to speak at our medical freedom forums, and she presented evidence at the state congressional COVID study. That evidence was then submitted in a form of a petition to our Attorney General here in Oklahoma, Gettner Drummond, requesting that he open criminal investigations into the COVID hospital protocols. He still has refused to act at this time. But today, we are honored to speak with this champion of medical freedom, bodily self-determination, and individual sovereignty. And before we bring her on, I want you all to hear part of her testimony that she shared with us this last October at the Oklahoma State Capitol Congressional COVID study.
When the pandemic hit, instead of closing my doors and refusing to see my patients, I opened my clinic 7 days a week, and I welcomed anyone that needed help. Initially, I used hydroxychloroquine, but as soon as President Trump suggested that it might be worthwhile looking at, the Texas State Board of Pharmacy prohibited all doctors from using it. So I did my best with breathing treatments, antibiotics, steroids, until monoclonal antibodies came about. Started using those. Those worked really well. But during the third and largest surge of the pandemic, the summer of 2021, the government took over distribution of monoclonal antibodies. They became harder and harder to get. Eventually I couldn't get them at all. And that's when I turned to ivermectin. I was worried, based on all the media hype, that I would hurt somebody. So I did what any doctor could do. Any person, actually, doesn't have to be a doctor. Went to the FDA's website. I researched the study that Merck submitted to get the medication approved by the FDA, and I found the toxicity data. I also did a literature search trying to find accidental and intentional overdoses from ivermectin and could not find any studies. So once I was assured it was safe, then I cautiously started using it. Cautiously because I really wasn't sure it was going to work as well as the monoclonal antibodies. But during the pandemic, I successfully treated over 6,000 COVID patients, and everybody that received early treatment is alive and well. I sued the FDA last year, along with Paul Merrick, who was one of the co-founders of FLCCC with Pierre Corey, and another physician, Dr. Robert Apter. And we sued the FDA over the misinformation that they put on social media, which created the war on ivermectin. I started a nonprofit called Americans for Health Freedom, and our foundational project is to recruit politicians to simply state that the COVID shots should be pulled off the market and also pledge not to take donations from Big Pharma. Educating the public about what I witnessed over the last 4 years. I had many patients coming to me very distraught over the mandates, and I felt compelled to share those stories on social media. This ruffled the feathers of Houston Methodist Hospital, which was the first hospital in the country to mandate the COVID shots. And they retaliated by suspending my privileges, and they did it in a very public fashion. I learned of the suspension through a text message from a reporter at the Houston Chronicle, and then I went on Twitter, and they were reporting that I was spreading dangerous misinformation that was harmful to the community. The story went global. I had people from Australia yelling at me. And my life was upended. I was kicked off 2 boards. I was kicked off multiple social media sites, and I was turned into the Texas Medical Board, which I'm still fighting 3 years later. At the time, one of my 4 sons was trying to get into high school, and he was rejected from all 4 private schools. One of them admitted that it was because of all the negative publicity that I had been through. So, they intended to silence me, but as my dad likes to say, they stepped on the wrong hornet, and I decided to fight back. The doctors, like myself, who have spoken out, we have sacrificed our careers, we have sacrificed our reputations, and we have sacrificed a tremendous amount of time for this effort. There's no upside to doing this, only downside. And if I had taken the other position, and if I had vaccinated the 6,000 patients that I treated for COVID, I would have made $1.5 million.
Whoa. Everybody, welcome with me. Dr. Bowden, thank you for coming on, and thank you for all that you do. Wow. What a testimony.
It is great to see you, Mick. Yeah, it's been a wild ride.
Yeah. I can tell you, I mean, just in the last year, there's been so much going on, and you have just been in the fight. And again, I really just want to say thank you, Dr. Bowden, because we really do appreciate everything that you are doing every day. You are out there putting yourself out there for the American people to ensure that they are taken care of, and that they are getting good care and good information. And so we just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you.
I do. You are most welcome. I tell you, we are grateful. I do want to kind of unpack and maybe start here the testimony that you gave in Oklahoma. I don't know what other people think about this, but I thought it was chilling. I thought it should motivate every healthcare provider, nurse, and pharmacist to stand up, speak out, and push back, because Dr. Bowden, what they are doing to you could be done to any one of us out there. We're not safe. We're not protected from this overreach. It's really a tyrannical vice grip that they've got going on. And as recently as October 17th this year, the Texas Medical Board has continued to persecute you, publicly reprimanding you and threatening more action because you gave ivermectin, a drug that's now over the counter in at least 5 states, including Texas, to a dying patient on hospice. And Dr. Bowden, I don't know if everybody is aware of this, but I would just love it if you could just kind of tell us what has occurred, what has led up to this last couple of weeks, and if you'll give us an update maybe on the situation where it stands right now.
Yeah, I actually never gave him ivermectin. It all started pretty much 4 years ago. I received a frantic call from Erin Jones and her husband, who was sheriff's deputy, served his community for 30 years, father of 6, and he was dying at Texas Hugley Hospital in Fort Worth, Texas. And they were discussing hospice. They had basically exhausted all options and they were giving up. And she wanted him to try ivermectin. Of course, the hospital refused. They would have rather let him die than try ivermectin. So she had to sue. And she asked me to help. And as part of that, I became the expert witness on the case. I testified alongside Senator Bob Hall. And I also became the prescribing doctor. And they had to have that as part of the lawsuit. So we go to court, we win. The judge orders the hospital to grant me emergency temporary privileges. And at that time, the credentialing process for obtaining privileges was really fast tracked. Like, you could get the privileges the same day because they were in such dire need of help. So they should have given me those privileges that day. Instead, they created all sorts of roadblocks. They made it very difficult. And I think the hearing was on a Tuesday. And by Friday, they were basically saying, well, we're not going to give you privileges, actually. And at the time, I had a clean record. At the time, I still had a good reputation. I had never been sued, never been before the board. So it was clearly they were just setting obstacles to keep him from getting ivermectin at all costs. So the lawyers go back to the judge. There's back and forth. I have to resubmit a second application, which I do. And then the lawyer for the patient, and I did not have my own lawyer, which was probably a strategical error on my part. But anyway, I relied on the patient's lawyer to give me advice. And she said, yes, we're good. We've got the green light. Everything's been sorted out. And I have this in text messages, and we also had a phone call. So I thought, the coast was clear. I send the nurse to the hospital. She's greeted by the police. There's the police, the hospital administrators show up. The patient's wife is there. They call the lawyer. There's discussion, but there's no scene. There's no, she's pushing her way into the ICU, and she's very calm, and she records the entire the entire interaction, and she leaves. But for that, I get turned into the medical board because they said I did not have privileges, that sending the nurse to the hospital was endangering other patients, and that I have the potential for doing, having this kind of behavior in the future. So, they took me.
God forbid.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was, I have said this repeatedly. This is a situation I've never been in. I doubt I'll ever be in again. I was navigating a very stressful situation where a man's life is on the line. It was a legal battle involved. There was miscommunication, and nobody was harmed. But they are not backing down, and I'm not backing down because I'm fighting on principle. I mean, first of all, they say this has nothing to do with ivermectin, which I don't believe, because during my deposition, they mentioned it 86 times. In the initial complaint that I received, it had ivermectin on there. I don't think they would be creating such a scene if I tried to give them amoxicillin. But let's just say it was nothing to do with ivermectin. Well, then basically it comes down to a patient is not allowed to get a second opinion outside of the hospital, no matter what, because it's very wrong. I mean, if you get into a hospital and you're basically trapped, I mean, it's very hard to transfer to another hospital. But what I want to get out of all this, I'm fighting just basically to bring awareness to the situation more than anything. But what I want to accomplish from this is to pass legislation so that patients don't have to sue to get a second opinion. Because let's say you have heart problems, you have a heart attack, you end up at one hospital, but your cardiologist doesn't have privileges there, but you have a cardiologist you trust and you have a good relationship with. That cardiologist should be able to come into that hospital, even if they're not privileged, on an emergency temporary basis and treat you. As long as their license is in good standing, there's no reason that shouldn't be allowed. It's the best outcome for the patient. It solves this problem where patients feel trapped in the hospital, because if you can bring in a doctor that you have found on your own that you trust, then that gives you some sort of safeguards against all the tyranny that we saw during COVID. So what happened, I had a hearing last week, and it's so ridiculous. They did not even allow my lawyers on the call. So I was going at it with them, and I had no idea my lawyers weren't there. It ended, and I was kind of mad. I'm like, why didn't my lawyers say anything? Well, it turns out they weren't even allowed on the call. So the hearing was not even valid. So there's all the press is saying, no, she's been publicly reprimanded. Well, technically, I was not publicly reprimanded because I was not allowed my counsel. And so we are requesting a rehearing. And then after the rehearing, then we will be appealing. And then there's two stages to that. It first goes to the appeals court, but then after that, it will likely go to the Supreme Court of Texas. So I may be at this for a while. I will say this process is messed up. I mean, at the initial hearing, I could have made it all go away if I just agreed to pay $5,000, take 8 hours of CME, and retake the jurisprudence exam. Well, that is absurd. If you are, right. And if I didn't take that, I mean, basically it's taken 4 years and $250,000 in legal fees to fight that. So I also want to figure out a way to reform this system, because, you do want checks and balances on rogue medical doctors, but this is a complete abuse of power.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that you weren't even allowed representation, what is the justification for that? I just have to ask, how could they say, oh yeah, well, we're not going to let our lawyers in, we're not going to let them speak? I submitted an open records request that day saying, okay, who was in charge of IT? I was trying to get more information. Of course, and then they blocked the open records request. Oh, we can't help you. So I had to send in some modifications, and I'm waiting to hear. But what's even worse? So the Houston Chronicle, which is the
leftist newspaper in Houston. It's the only major newspaper in Houston. They wrote a hit piece about me, and they did not ask me for comment, but they did reach out to the medical board, about an hour after the hearing. They gave the medical board all day long. The medical board responded at 4:00 in the afternoon with an 8-paragraph response. And they did not mention the fact, despite being fully aware, that my lawyers weren't there and that the hearing was not even valid. So
that's ridiculous.
There's just a lot.
That is just so ridiculous. That is above and beyond. It just shows you the depths that they will go to persecute. And I'm just going to use those words because I that's how I see this. It seems like they are just like coming after you and going after you. You didn't give them ivermectin, but still that opened the door. That wasn't going to stop them. So I guess my question is that the game here, Dr. Bowden? Because we see this happening to other physicians as well. Anybody who steps a toe out of line, doesn't carry the narrative, that's it. You're in the crosshairs. And so is that it? Is this just a continual pursual after you, adding as much pain as possible, hoping that you will break? Or is there an end point to this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to break. And thankfully, I have a donor who's handling my legal fees going forward, so I don't have to worry about that anymore. And I'm not the only doctor that got targeted, and this was not my only complaint. I actually got 3 complaints over ivermectin issues. And again, one patient never even took the ivermectin. Well, no, both of them didn't even take the ivermectin. And the patients weren't upset. So it's ridiculous. I was turned in by a pharmacist, and I was turned in by an ex-wife. Basically the father got it for his son. And then, doctors all across Texas got, Dr. Joe Verone got several complaints. Dr. Stella Emanuel got complaints. Dr. Angie Farella got complaints. Dr. Eric Henson lost his freaking license for, temporarily because he didn't wear a stupid mask in his office. Sam Sigaloff also, he basically just abandoned his license. He couldn't take it anymore because they're just going after him for the stupid ivermectin. And people don't realize, they think of Texas as this, independent, freedom-loving state, but the medical mafia controls our state. We have the largest medical center in the world in Houston, Texas. And we were the first in the country to mandate the shots, which is, I stepped on the toes of that hospital, and here we are.
Well, thank you for stepping on those toes. And we're grateful because it has to happen. We need that advocacy. That is gone now. We don't have patient-physician relationships. We don't have that advocacy anymore. So you go into the hospital and basically, you're having to monitor the records. You're going to have your own personal advocate with you just to intervene to make sure that they're not doing whatever. And we saw what they did during COVID, giving remdesivir against people's wishes, or, saying, no, we can't do ivermectin, although it was on the NIH, 2E table, saying that it was a treatment for COVID, a therapy for COVID, but they wouldn't allow it. In the brief that we presented to our Attorney General, there was a physician who made a declaration, a whistleblower testimony, and he revealed in there that there was a criminal collusion by hospital leadership with the federal authorities to harm the well-being of Americans. Those are his words. He was in a position of leadership at the facility, and he attested that remdesivir was not only inaccurately represented to the physicians in the hospital, but confirmed that federal health agencies, specifically Medicare and Medicaid, directed the hospital care provided to the COVID patients through the NIH and the CDC, which was strictly adhered to in order to get federal funding. And so, any dissent he put in there, his words, any dissent was met with retaliation from leadership in the hospital. And we've seen medical professionals who have stepped away from the approved narrative, the safe and effective, the shot is safe and effective. They automatically get placed in the weaponized medical industrial complex. I mean, we saw it with Dr. Kirk Moore. You've mentioned several, Peter McCullough, Pierre Corey, yourself. So Dr. Bowden, you've seen, and I'm just going to call it the seedy underbelly of the beast. I'd like to take maybe a 30,000 foot view. How did the core ethical principles that really guide the duties of physician, I mean, we're talking patient well-being, respect for autonomy, informed consent. How did that just become so derailed? We don't have it at all now.
Well, it's centralized medicine. I mean, 20 years ago, it wasn't quite like this. Individual doctors had autonomy. And I was very fortunate because the way my practice is set up, I am not beholden to any third parties. I call myself third party free. So I don't contract with hospitals, the government, or insurance companies. The only people I work for are my patients. And that allowed me to treat them the way I thought they should be treated. But that most doctors can't say that. They're either employees of the hospital, they're employees of a private equity group, they're employees of the government, and they've got a third party dictating how they take care of patients. I mean, I saw a patient yesterday who's coming to see me for a vaccine injury. She went to her rheumatologist at Johns Hopkins, and she asked him to get the spike protein antibody test. And he said, I'm not allowed to. I can't. Like he went in the computer. It was not even an option. And that's just a small example. But yeah, I think that is the big problem. We've been taken over. There's, the overlords have taken over medicine, and then it just wipes out the doctor-patient relationship.
Yeah. And that is the one thing that I noticed slipping away very early. I did 28 years in nursing, and I started seeing it. I see it when in 2008, when the Affordable Care Act came in. I started seeing all the, cultural training that was pushed through that became DEI, and physicians becoming employees of the hospital, and, all the incentivized electronic medical records that CMS shoved through. So with protocols and profits being prioritized over humanity, doctor-patient relationships in the hospital being destroyed, is the system irredeemable? Do you think it's irredeemable?
I don't think we're going to be able
redeemable.
I don't think we'll be able to.
I'm redeemable.
I don't think we're going to be able to destroy it. I think we have to find ways to work around it, which is sort of my idea with this whole second opinion law, where you can bring in a doctor to the hospital that is, maybe not your friend, but you can bring in the doctor that you trust. I have looked at starting a hospital, but it's such a daunting endeavor, and there aren't enough, independent doctors like myself to support an endeavor like that. But hopefully we can make some headway. If we can decentralize medicine, I'm very excited that there's a like-minded doctor. Pete Chambers is running for governor of Texas, and he has promised to decentralize medicine, at least in Texas, to the best of his ability. But I'm not optimistic that we'll be able to take the entire system down. I just think that we're going to have to find a second system and work around that system.
So do you think the future kind of looks like, and I see kind of workarounds being done with like direct patient care? They, no intermediaries, you don't have insurance companies, you don't have those kind of dictates. Do you think that could be a future path?
Definitely. It's a growing movement. It's called direct primary care, and it's like affordable concierge care. So I think of concierge care as something for, the wealthy, and you have, your doctor on call 24/7. You don't need that. Most people don't. But the direct primary care model, typically you pay a monthly fee comparable to a gym membership. and you get more time to your doctor. With your doctor, you usually can get same day appointments if needed. And you don't have that third party middleman. I mean, you should, insurance is for catastrophic issues, cancer, car crashes, major surgery, that sort of thing. But you're going to get a better experience and better outcome if you avoid the system as much as possible, except for the extreme situations.
Yeah. And I think so, because I think we need to get back to where we just are one-on-one with that physician. I mean, that's where it needs to come back to patient-centered care. I remember everything we did used to be focused around the patient, involving the family in that care, and it all went for the betterment, the best needs, the best treatment of the patient. I think that's where physicians like yourself are leading that way. And I'd love to see us continue to have that expand and grow. I watched a documentary. Yeah, I know you've probably watched it too. It's called An Inconvenient Study. And that really shined a huge light for me, Dr. Bowden, on the censorship and the criminal fraud of vaccine safety and their clinical trials. And, as I was watching it, I just want to tell you a couple things that kind of stood out to me, and then I'd love to get your insight on it. But here was this highly credentialed, respected physician who was more than eager to perform and agree to do a study comparing vaccinated and unvaccinated children, and then publish the results regardless of what it showed. But then as I watched the documentary, what I saw is he quickly enacted tactics to salvage himself because the evidence was so strong. And there was a couple things that came out in the documentary. The vaxxed children were 2.5 times more likely to have chronic diseases than unvaxxed children, 6 times more likely to have autoimmune diseases if you're vaccinated versus unvaccinated, 5.5 times more likely to have neurodevelopment disorders if you're vaccinated versus unvaccinated. And Dr. Bowden, I believe that this physician knew when those results came out that the big pharma dragon and the blackmailable government would crush him. They would pull his credentials, everything he has. They would destroy his career. And I even heard him through that talk about, there's, politics that could be involved. Yeah, for sure. Right. And so, he didn't publish the study, but I believe he saw it. I believe he saw that this is an intentional campaign to make children sick, dependent slaves of the system, a pipeline to ensure that there's always medical needs requiring subsidized funds from the government. And then with immunity and massive power, if you try and take that veil away, they're going to fight. So I would love to get your insight into the documentary and what your thoughts are on what it exposed.
Yeah, I mean, the doctor, there's no upside. He's right. I mean, there's no upside to going public. And look what they did to Dr. Andrew Wakefield. I mean, they destroyed him. He no longer practices medicine. So I get it, but wow. I mean, that's the ethics of just ignoring that data and passing on publishing it it's pretty unbelievable. And I watched that film and I was rattled. I mean, I have 4 kids and I lined them up for all the shots. I did not question it. And it was upsetting to see this. It's not, when I was in training, they just glossed over vaccines. It was just assumed they were safe and effective. And, maybe if I had been a pediatrician, I would have dug into it more. But because I'm not a pediatrician, I didn't dig into it. And I just lined my kids up, and it's upsetting to see that. And I regret it.
Yeah. I saw a post that you made the other day when you were saying that, now you're questioning everything, and I do too. I go back through all my years of training and everything that I did, and I have to question even down to the littlest, even Tylenol, giving Tylenol, I mean, how crazy is that, Dr. Bowden? I mean, this is insanity.
It's scary, actually, because what else is out there that we've just assumed all along is safe? I think I listed Tylenol, organ donation, and the definition of brain death. I've watched some interesting interviews on that. The statin medications. I was trained that red meat was dangerous, and now I'm a huge carnivore fan. There's a lot that I've learned, and I'm thankful for COVID in that regard, because I have just learned so much.
Wow. Yeah, me too. One of the things that I want to point out to people is, when you spoke in Oklahoma, you spoke that there were 7,000 studies that were showing adverse reactions from the COVID shots, that COVID vax kids ages 5 to 18 in the U.S. are dying at 5.7 times higher than unvaccinated children. So, that is massive. How can we get that to penetrate? We hear RFK Jr., has talked about, the things that they're doing in the HHS. We hear all these physicians, there's all this evidence, and still I feel like it's just not penetrating, because we should have just had these shots removed off the market like yesterday.
Right. We have an abundance of data. We have more than enough data to pull the shots off the market. They should have been pulled off the market a very long time ago, January of 2021, based on what was happening. So I have sort of given up on the executive branch doing anything about this, at least in this presidential term. I think Trump is a true believer. But the upside is the general public is not getting these shots for the most part. If you watch the September ACIP meeting, the CDC admitted that only 10% of healthcare workers were getting the latest version of these COVID shots. So that means that we are winning the information war, and our government is ignoring the public. The government is refusing to back down. But what I would like to say to all those politicians out there, that if you're not getting these shots, you need to question why, because the CDC would recommend that you get one. And if you have safety concerns about these shots, you are obligated to speak up, because your job is to protect your constituents. And if they aren't safe enough for you, then why are they safe enough for your constituents? And if they aren't safe enough for your kids or your grandkids, why are they safe enough for your constituents' kids or grandkids? It's total hypocrisy.
Amen. That is 100% correct. And if you've got physicians and nurses who are saying, no, we're not going to get the shots, then they shouldn't be giving that in their practice either.
Right. And even, the head of the FDA, Dr. Marty Makary, has said he's not getting any more shots. And yet he's allowing the rest of the world rest of America to get them.
Yeah. Absolutely. I really do believe it's going to be up to we, the people, to push the movement forward. And we've seen that people like yourself, we, the people, have been the ones getting it to this point, so that there is a vast amount of information and education that is absolutely correct and true out there. And you spoke at the Oklahoma Congressional Study on COVID. That was October last year. You spoke about the dangers of the mRNA shots, and then you brought receipts. You had spoken that 7%, this was back in 2024, 7% of your new patients had come to you with injuries directly related to the shots. Mm-hmm. Well, since the submission of our petition to Attorney General Gettner Drummond here in Oklahoma to open up criminal investigations into the COVID hospital protocols, he has informed me of some of his ideological beliefs. He says that ivermectin was a drug that was debunked and was shown to be not helpful during COVID. He says that only 0.1% of the people were harmed during COVID and that healthcare did the best that it could. And so I kind of think that his ideology may be impacting why he's not acting on our petition. And so you're on the front lines, Dr. Bowden. You've treated over 6,000 patients. With all that you have been through, what would you say to Gettner Drummond if he said that to you?
You know, part of a job, the job satisfaction of being a doctor is when your patients respond to the treatment you give them and they get better. There's no way I would give that many patients a medication that didn't work. It would be very depressing to give all those thousands of patients that medication and see it not work. I just wouldn't do it. I wouldn't have people coming back to see me. And when you treat that, I don't think I've ever treated that many patients with one disease in my career. You quickly become an expert. I mean, you quickly realize what's working and what's not working. So I would say, unless, put yourself in my shoes, Attorney General, and try to understand that, clinical experience is invaluable.
Right on. We're gonna keep moving forward. We're gonna keep pushing. But I did hear James Comer. He's the head of the oversight committee. He says that with 100%, this came out today, with 100% certainty, Dr. Fauci's pardon is null and void, and that will stand in any court. And wow. I'm kind of with you, right? I hope it happens. I hope it does happen, but I'm with you. I kind of pushed past, maybe the elected officials right now. I do believe it's going to be the power of the people that will stop the dangerous COVID shots, remove them off the market, stop the elected officials from taking monies from big pharma lobbyists, and open criminal investigations. But you're a champion, and I'm going to call you that because you have gone and done tons of local action. You got down and started looking at the granular level in the vaccine and the vaccine injuries. I mean, you are right there reinforcing that it's the power of the people that is what's needed. So where do you encourage people to kind of dig in to activism? Where do you think people can kind of help in this movement, move things forward?
Well, yeah. I mean, I started an organization called Americans for Health Freedom to try to encourage more politicians to speak up. Basically, it's a list of every politician I can find who's simply willing to state that the COVID shot should be pulled off the market. We have a lot on the local level. We only have 3 members of Congress, Thomas Massie, Ron Johnson, and Marjorie Taylor Greene. But we would like to see, more expand on that. So that's one thing people can do is they can reach out to their local representatives and ask them to join this effort because courage is contagious. I think the local level is important, connecting with the people that represent you and trying to hold them accountable. And social media is a great way to do that. It's a necessary evil. If you are interested in this fight, just speaking up and, every single voice comes together and can be quite powerful.
Absolutely. You wrote a book, producer. We have a picture of that book. I'd like to put it up. You wrote this book, phenomenal. I was hoping maybe you could tell people a little bit about it and maybe where they can get this. I know it's on Amazon.
Yeah, it's actually not available yet. It's still being proofread and polished, but it will come out in May. And it's basically just a memoir of my experience over the last 5 years in detail that I don't cover quite as much in interviews. Just documenting everything that happened and sort of giving you a closer look at what my experience was.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm grateful for everything that you have done. I want to give you kind of the last word. Dr. Bowden, is there anything that you'd like to talk about? You'd like to have the audience be aware of right now?
Well, I still see the injured in my office every day, so I'm constantly reminded of this. And these are new patients. They are typically gaslit by other providers. There is two very important lawsuits that people should be aware of. One is Brooke Jackson, whistleblower for Pfizer. That lawsuit started 5 years ago, and they're in appeal mode at the Fifth Circuit in New Orleans. I believe there's going to be a hearing coming up in December. And the key problem with this is that our Attorney General, Pam Bondi, has intervened and is defending Pfizer and trying to get the case dismissed. So that's very frustrating, but
wow,
we need to get loud about that. Why is Pam, Pam Bondi can just step aside and let the justice system do its work. But as it stands now, she's trying to get the case dismissed. There's another case by physician's assistant Deb Conrad, who is suing Rochester Memorial Hospital. She reported about 200 patients to VAERS, and then she was fired for doing so. So she's fired. She's suing because they fired her, but also because all these providers did not submit reports to VAERS. So everybody needs to be aware of this. If you were injured by these shots, if you suspect you were injured by the shots, even if you got COVID and you landed in the hospital after these shots, you may be able to sue if the person that gave you these shots did not report it to VAERS. And the statute of limitations is 6 years, so there's plenty of time. And if they were able to get groups of people from each hospital, they could really cause some damage to these hospitals. They're filing under the False Claims Act, so it avoids the protections from the PrEP Act. And the organization that is doing this it's under Warner Mendenhall's Freedom Council. So if you go to Freedom Council, and that's COUNSEL.org, you can express interest in pursuing this, and they will reach out to you.
Thank you so much. That is great information. We're going to make a special clip out of that and make sure and get that out so that everybody is aware. Dr. Bowden, it has been an honor. It is a blessing every time that we talk to you, and it is a pleasure to see you again. Please be blessed and take care of yourself, and we will be supporting you in any way that we can from this end.
Well, thank you so much, Mick.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate you all today. Thank you so much for showing up and being with us. We're going to see you tomorrow, actually Thursday, not tomorrow, Thursday. Remember that resistance is not futile, and blessings to you all always. It's time to stand up, speak out, get involved, and let's be intentional.